Hello, guys. We will be starting in about 5 to 10 minutes. So please call your friends and your batchmates. Hey everyone, we'll be starting in 5 minutes. So just a reminder, call your friends and batchmates if they haven't come yet. Thank you. Also, guys, before we get started, I'd just like to point out that during the workshop, if you have any doubts, you can just put it in the doubts channel on the Discord server. And I would also strongly suggest that if possible, watch the stream on a separate device or at least on a split screen so that if you ever have to code and follow along at the same time, then it wouldn't be a hassle. Hey guys, also just to confirm, how many of you have actually set up Git before coming to the workshop? How many of you have actually do need to set it up now? You can ask your doubts on the Discord text channel as well. There's a text channel called Doubts Discussions. And if needed, if your doubt isn't being able to solve just by writing text, then you can join the voice channel as well. Okay, so some of you still need to set up. A lot of you have set it up already. That's nice to see. So those who still have to set up, uh, follow the instructions that we have written or mentioned in the Git workshop channel in the server. And if you face any difficulty while doing it, just put your doubt there and we'll help you out. That's nice. A lot of you have set it up already. We'll be starting in about a minute. So if you're still installing Git and getting it set up, then do it at your own pace. There's no rush. We won't start with any of the implementation part until some 5 minutes into the workshop. So take your time. All right, let's get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first workshop of our series. Before we get started, I'd like to reiterate that we have a Discord server running for any doubts that you can have during the workshop. And I suggest that if possible, watch this stream on another device or at least a split screen so that when you have to code and follow along at the same time, it won't be a hassle. We'll go slow enough, but if it's up to you, if you want another screen, it'll be easier to follow along. Otherwise, there's no issue. With that said, I'm Shreyas.
And I am Ayush.
And the two of us will be guiding you through this workshop on Git today. As an introduction, we both are project leaders at IMG. So, what exactly is Git? Many of you might have heard of it for the first time. Some of you have might have heard the name before, but don't know exactly what it is. So, Git is a form of version control, and it is the backbone of collaborative software development. And these words may sound like very strange to you, and some of them might have gone over your head. But we will explain everything step by step in just a moment. So don't worry. Uh, the agenda for today, what we'll be going through is learning about Git, learn about GitHub, and make it clear that Git and GitHub are not the same thing, and we'll explain the difference. And by the end of the workshop, you'll have hosted your own website on GitHub in a few easy steps. Before we do all that, I'd like to start with a short story. Okay. So, many of you might be knowing this TV show. Well, I've personally loved it since I was a kid. And if you still don't know, it's called Phineas and Ferb. And it's a show about two clever little kids who find inventive things to do on each day of their summer vacation. But on one of those days, it turns out to be rainy. And Phineas is stuck at home and he doesn't know what to do. After some thinking, he decides to start writing a diary. So he invites you to do it along with him as well. In the next few minutes, we're going to be writing or creating a diary for Phineas and help you understand the concept of Git along with it. So now is the time for you to start coding and following along. So get ready. Now, since Phineas is smarter than the average 9-year-old, he's not going to use a pen and a notebook for this diary. He's going to do it on a computer. So to follow along, first go to your desktop, and I will be explaining for both Linux users if you have Linux installed. But if you have Windows installed, that's fine as well. We'll be explaining it for both. So right click on the desktop, and you should see an option called Open in Terminal. If you're in Windows, it should say Git Bash here, which is the same, like it is the counterpart of the terminal that we'll be using here. It's not the exact counterpart, but for the purposes of Git, use Git Bash in Windows and terminal in Linux. Once that is open, put it on one side. And many of you might be using the terminal for the first times in their life or haven't seen it before or aren't used to using it. So I'll have a file explorer open along with it and open the desktop tab and put it to the side. Now, the reason I have both of these open is that what a terminal really is, it's just another way of interacting with your computer. Like if you look at the file explorer, you move around with your mouse and you click on objects. The difference in the terminal is just that you write enter text commands to do the same thing. For example, here I can clearly see that I have a pictures folder in my desktop. But if I want to see what content I have in my desktop folder in the terminal, then I type out the ls command. Now, ls is just like list, you can think of it. If I enter it, I'll see the contents of the folder. Now, to create, now I just want to reiterate one more time like, this all can be very new to you. Any doubt you have, put it in the doubts channel and we'll help you out. Now, again, with that said, okay, I see a doubt saying like how to do it in Mac. Since Linux and Mac are both Unix based systems, you can use the same commands that I'm using right here. Just open the terminal, go to your desktop, and if you feel comfortable, have it open in a file explorer and just follow along. The commands will be the same for Mac. Now, we want to create a diary for Phineas. So, first, we will create a folder called diary using the command mkdir diary. Now, mkdir stands for make directory if you don't know, and we write that command along with the name of the folder that we want to create. And throughout this workshop, I'll be using the words directory and folder interchangeably. They both mean the same thing, so don't get confused. Once I enter it, you should see that a folder called diary comes up in the file explorer. I can also see it using the ls command. Now to go into the diary, I will use the cd command, which stands for change directory, and I pass the name of the folder that I want to go into. Now you can see that I'm inside the folder diary, and I'll just do the same in the file explorer. Now it's empty because I just created it. So let's create the first entry for the day. And since today is December the 22nd, I will create a file called December22nd.txt. Now you might know what the command is to create a file. That is touch with the name of the file, dec22.txt. Then you can see that a file called December22nd.txt shows up in your file structure. Now, Phineas would like to write in that entry. So I open that file in my default text editor. For Windows users, it could be Notepad. Not sure about Mac, but there should be an alternative for that there as well. So he writes, today was a rainy day. I wonder where Perry is. He saves it and closes the uh, text editor. Now, after some time, the sun comes out. Now, Phineas wants to go back and change the entry to sunny day. But he wonders what happens if it rains again? Will he have to change it back? And will he have to keep changing it back and forth every time the weather changes? So instead, what Phineas thinks is he'll create two files, one for a rainy day and one for a sunny day. And he names it December 22 underscore sunny.txt. And in that, as you might have guessed, he enters, today was a sunny day. He saves it and closes it. Now, what Phineas thinks is that every time that there's a change he wants to make in his diary, he has to create a new file. And every time he has to create a new file, he has to come up with a new name. That seems very inefficient and unorganized and a waste of space for Phineas. So Phineas doesn't like this. That's why he decides to learn about Git. Now, what is Git? Simply put, Git is an open source version control system. Now, what does that mean? Open source software is code that is designed to be publicly accessible. So it's freely available on the internet. Anyone can download it, edit it, modify it according to their needs, and they can distribute it as well. And more times than not, the people that contribute to open source software, they haven't even met each other in real life. They just know each other by their GitHub handles. Now, the second part of the definition of Git, which would be the most important part, is version control system. Version control is the process of tracking the changes that you make your file structure. Whenever you're working on some software, and just to be clear, it doesn't have to be a software. Like, for example, the example that I'm using is a diary that Phineas is making. So Git, it doesn't matter to get what you're tracking. It just matters that they have to be files. But since we are developers, obviously we'll track code, right? So throughout the presentation, I'll be saying code a lot, but it doesn't have to be just code. Now, what does it mean to control your versions? Whenever you're making a software, you don't ever make it all at once, right? You never make it in one night. It's a long process. And every time you reach a certain checkpoint or you've written enough code, you want to save it in such a way that even if you make a mistake later on, you can go back to a previous version and continue from there because you know that at least till that point you were correct. So that is version control. And the way it does that is you take snapshots at intervals when you know that you've done correct work. As written in the statement here, the systems are used to take snapshots of your files whenever you reach a certain checkpoint. Now, what do I mean by snapshots? It's literally a snapshot, like a picture taken. It is an exact representation of how your files look at the time that the snapshot was taken. And you take these snapshots over multiple instances of time in time, like I already just said. Now, in the world of Git, the technical term for snapshot is a commit. Every time you want to save your changes, you commit it to Git, and Git stores the commits in the order that you create them. And that makes sense. Now, how exactly does Git take the snapshot? Like, how does it make that commit? So, to understand that, we'll walk through a visual example. Say you have two files in your working directory. Now, what I mean by a working directory is the file structure of your computer. The the only reason we call it a working directory is to differentiate it from the term Git repository, which we'll be seeing later. But just for now, understand that a working directory is the file structure on your computer, and you have two files in your folder. Now, how does Git know that it should start tracking this? By default, why would it even track these files? You have to tell Git, right? You have to ask it to track these files. If you want it to let it know that I want these to be in. So to do that, first you use the git add command. What git add does is it sees the files in the working directory and it allows you to add them to a staging area. Now, it doesn't mean that the files are not in your directory anymore. They are still in your directory, but just for the purposes of the example, I've moved them from the working directory to the staging area. Next, how does Git know to commit them? You have to tell it to explicitly commit them. Like the difference between adding and committing is that in adding, you tell Git what files you want to commit. You add, for example, in this case, I added file 1 and file 2 to the staging area. And now when I want to permanently save those changes, I will use the command git commit. What git commit does is it takes the files that are in the staging area, all of the files rather, it takes all of the files in the staging area and creates a commit and stores it in its own repository. This way you can see that the commit was done. Just as an overview of everything that we just went through in this example, first the files were in the working directory. You use the command git add to add it to a staging area, and you use the command git commit to finally save those changes with git. You can kind of think of this as the eye of git, right? Whatever is in your working directory, git does not directly look at it. You have to ask git to look at them. And once it can see them, everything that it can see, it adds it into a commit. Now, another way to think about it is if you've ever taken a picture before, and I'm sure you have. So, what do? First, you think, or first, you decide whose picture you want to take, whether it's a person or a tree or a house, and you focus on it with your camera. And once it's been focused, that's when you click the shutter button and take the picture. It's the same in Git. The process of focusing is the command git add. Git add tells Git to focus on specific files in your working directory that you want in this commit to be. You don't have to change every file in your code base, right? In every commit, you'll be changing them one file at a time or two files at a time. So every time you make a small change, you tell Git that you want to commit these files that I've changed. And then Git commits those and it adds it to your history. Now, what exactly do I mean by this Git repository which stores the commit? Think of this Git repository as like a storage area where it stores all of these snapshots that you have taken one by one. So you might have the first commit, and after that, the next commit is stored on top of that, and every commit after that, and so on. Now, one thing that you might have wondered is if every commit is a complete snapshot of the working directory, does isn't that a huge waste of space? shouldn't it be only committing those files which have changed? But the thing is, it Git has an algorithm to commit them and store the complete snapshot without data duplication. Now, how exactly Git does that, what algorithm it uses, it's not of concern to us. All we need to know is how to use Git. Now that we've been through a working example, um, let us go through we've been through a visual example. Let us go through a working example to more understand how Git exactly works. Now let's go back to Phineas. Now that Phineas has learned about Git, like, he doesn't want to keep alternate files anymore. So he's going to delete the alternate file that he created. Before actually I move on to the working example, I'll just look at what all doubts people have. If there are some common doubts, then I'll answer them here. So, some people have asked that whether they need to install a text editor as well. So, there should already be a default text editor installed in your device. Like, for example, Linux has this thing, text editor, Windows has a notepad. So, that's enough. Okay. So, can I continue, or is there any doubt you can answer in the Discord channel or the live chat? Either one works. Like in whatever I just explained with the slides. Okay, since I'm not seeing any new doubts, I'll go along with the example. So, I had just said, just to recap, that Phineas had created an entry in his diary for December 22nd, but then since the weather changed and he didn't know exactly what it was going to be, rainy or sunny that day, he had created two alternate files. But since it's inefficient to create multiple files at the same time, he started to use Git, and now he won't be needing the alternate files. And through Phineas, I'll help you understand how exactly to use Git. So, like I said in the slides before, how exactly does Git know to track these files? It doesn't know by default. Git doesn't track these files by default. To do so, I'll have to initialize my directory as a Git repository. To do that, I'll use the command git init, basically git initialize. And you can see in the output that it said it and initialize an empty Git repository, the one we just talked about, in this path. You can see that inside my diary folder, I should now have a .git folder, but I can't see that in the file explorer. That's because .git is by default hidden. Since it starts with a full stop, Linux by default doesn't show it in the file explorer. To see it, I'll have to type the list command, which, as you can see above, shows the contents of my directory, but with a flag -a. -a stands for all. It means that I'd like to see all the files, even the hidden ones. Now, what exactly is this .git repository? Let's go inside it using the change directory command, and we can see all the files and folders inside it, again with the -a flag. You can see that there are folders, branches, hooks, objects, info, ref. Like I said before, how Git does what it does, we don't need to know. We just need to know how to use Git. So I just wanted to show you that these things exist, but there's no need for you to know what they do. Let's go back to the parent directory, back to the diary folder using the cd space dot command. Dot stands for the parent directory. Now that I'm in the diary command, no, sorry, diary folder, I'd like to show you another command of Git called git status. This is a very commonly used command, and it helps you see, like in the name, it helps you see the status of the files in your folder. Like, what is the status? How many of them are tracked? Which ones aren't tracked? And all. So as we can see here, there is one file which is still not tracked by Git. And how do we track it? Git tells us right here. We can use the command git add and the name of the file. Using it, if I run it, it doesn't show any output, but to see the changes, I can run git status again. And now it's shown in green, which means that Git has started tracking it. And since it's shown in green, this means that Git has added it to the staging area and it is ready to be committed. Once again, previously when I ran git status, it was untracked. It was shown in red, which means Git still hadn't started tracking this file. But since we want to bring Git's attention to it, we want Git to focus on that file, we added it to the staging area by using the git add command by passing the name of the file. And we ran git status again to see that now it's in green and it's been added to the staging area and it's ready to be committed. How we commit it? Using the git commit command. We don't just write git commit, we also pass a -m flag, which stands for a message flag. Now, a commit message is a simple string that is used to describe the changes that you made in this specific commit. If you're creating multiple snapshots or multiple commits over many checkpoints, how can you distinguish one commit from another? You will need to know what changes were made in that, right? If you want to go back to a certain version, you want to know which checkpoint you want to go back to. That's why we use the string commit string. So in this commit, I've just created the entry for December 22nd. So that's what I'll write in the commit string. Create entry for December 22. I hit enter and Git tells me that the commit has been created. One file was changed and it had one line in it. That makes sense. Now, if I look at status again, it says that there is nothing to commit and the working tree is clean. Now, suppose Phineas wants to change the entry again, and now he wants to make it today was a sunny day, and he saves it. And Phineas also feels that his diary is a bit empty. He wants to add a description for just in case. he forgets what the diary is about. So he creates another file called description.txt, and again the command to do that is touch description.txt. You can see that the file shows up in the file directory, and I'll click on it to edit it. And there's a simple description that he adds. This is the diary of Phineas Flynn. He saves it and closes the text editor. Now if we run, now what have we done? We have two files. One file is a new one that we just created, description.txt, and one file we had already created before and we have simply modified it, right? So when we run git status, what should it tell us? Based on our past output of the git status, we can at least predict that it will tell us that description.txt would be an untracked file. But what about December22.txt? It's no longer an untracked file, right? Because it started tracking it. So Git shows both of them different. One of them, it has started tracking, but it's not been staged for commit, which is our December22.txt file. The other one is our description.txt. It hasn't started tracking that file yet. That is the difference between the two. One says that it hasn't been tracked. The other says that it started tracking, but it's not staged for commit and it has been modified. That's the difference between the two. Now, another thing I said some time ago was that when you are working on some software, you don't commit all of the files every single time. Like if you're building a huge application, then you work on it chunk by chunk. You edit a couple files at a time, and then you store a commit as a checkpoint, right? So in this case, I've added a description and edited my entry, but I want them to be in separate commits. So how do I do that? Now, once again, like I had said before, Git in a commit, it takes a snapshot of everything that's in the staging area. So if I want these two files to be in different commits, in different snapshots, then I simply add them to the staging area one by one. So for example, let's say I want to I want to commit my entry first. Then I will add that git add December22.txt to the staging area. And if I see the status now, only that file is in the staging area. The description.txt is still on track. It hasn't been touched. So if I run the commit command now, Git only sees that December 22 is in the staging area. And along with the commit, I'll add a message that goes along saying that change December 22 entry to sunny day. Now, a good practice is to keep these commit messages as descriptive as possible because today you might know what changes you made and that might be clear in your head. But if you come back 1 year later and try to figure out what went wrong here, you will need the commit message to be as descriptive as possible. I can run git status to see that that file is no longer in the staging area. It's no longer waiting to be committed. The only thing that remains is the description, which is still untracked. So let's commit that as well. Again, we use the command, same command as before, git add, and the name of the file. I run git status to see that it's in the staging area now, waiting to be committed. I commit, again with the string that goes along with it, add description to diary, and I hit enter. It tells me that the commit has been made. Well, one question that I just saw just like some time ago is it necessary to have the computer connected to the internet for doing all this? Git runs on your laptop. So it does not need an internet connection. Right, I see it's been answered as well. Okay. Okay, so up till now, I just want to recap what we just did. First, we initialized the repository as a Git repository. It wasn't being tracked by Git, but now the directory has a Git repository, which means that you can now make commits and all. You can start tracking the versions or controlling the versions of it. The git init command initialized a .git directory, which we said that it contains many folders on how Git stores the commits, but we don't have to wrap our heads around it. We just need to know that it exists and Git does what it does. But what we do need to pay attention to is these commands below. First, we ran git status to see the status of the files in our directory. At that point, we only had one file, december22.txt. In order to track it, we added it to the staging area using this command. And when we saw the status again, it was now in green and waiting to be committed. We committed that using the git commit command and passed a string that goes along with it and run the status again. Now to see that there is nothing left to commit and it said that the working tree is clean. After that, we did two things. We created, sorry to scroll so quickly, but after committing, we did two things. We created a description and we modified the December 22 file. So that's when we ran get status, it showed us two things. One that we have an untracked new file and one that we have modified an old file. And we committed those changes individually. We didn't want them to be in the same commit. So we added the December 22nd file first. We ran status to see that it's in the staging area. Then we ran the commit command to finally commit that. And next, we ran the status again to see that the description is still untracked. We tracked it using the git add command. We checked the status and committed that as well. Now, I keep saying that we committed, and when we want to go back to certain commit, then we can do that using git. But how do we actually see these commits? Where are these commits? We should at least know what commits we've made, right? So to do that, git has provided the log command. If I run git log, I see a list of three commits that I've just made. It's shown in reverse chronological order, which means the latest commit is shown above, and the first commit that I had made, it's shown at the bottom. So we started by creating an entry for December 22, and then we changed the entry from rainy to sunny day. And then we added a new file called a description. These commits are shown in detail here, as we can see. It's shown along with the commit hash, the author of the commit, like who created it. It should be showing your name and your email address here, along with the timestamp and the commit message. Similarly for all three commits. Now you can exit the screen using the Q button. Um, so these were the git commands that I wanted to tell you, but any doubts that you might have, I'll stop for some time and try to answer them. So I'll be checking Discord, and if you're following along on YouTube, I guess you could put it there as well. Okay, so when you entered git log, the log opened in that window only, and I didn't need to enter queue. Is there any reason to it that I should know? Okay, so that depends on terminal to terminal. Like for example, what I said was the terminal is just an interface to interact with the computer, right? And similarly, the file explorer has a different interface. Now, the terminal itself can have many types. Some of you might have a bash. In my case, I have ZSH. They are just two different kinds of terminals. More or less, they are the same, but there are a few differences here and there, and this is one of them. Uh, on some terminals, I think bash terminals, you won't have to quit every time you do get log. For example, here I have to press Q to exit, but others you might not need to do it. So there's no like special reason for that. And like, don't be shy. Everyone is new to the workshop, and we don't expect you to know anything, as we had said in the message. So whatever doubts you have, don't think that it's like too low. Nobody was going to judge you. So I'll wait a couple more minutes before we move on. So if you have anything to ask, please do. All right, guys. Think we've waited enough now. But if you still have any doubt that comes up later on, please just write it down, and then we'll do the best to help you out. Okay. Don't hesitate. Now, with that said, this concludes everything that I had to say about Git, which is the first part of the workshop. Now, let's move on to GitHub, which will be explained by my peer, Ayush Bansal.
Hi. So, what is GitHub? As you can see, the word can be broken down into two parts. Git, as we have just learned, is a version control system, and the other part, hub, is a center of activity. Hence, GitHub is a common platform where developers can upload their Git repositories for others to see and contribute to. GitHub is a cloud-based code hosting platform for version control and collaboration, in which multiple people can contribute to the same code and at the same time parallelly. Now, if Git is not GitHub, then what is the difference between Git and GitHub? Now, pay attention with me. Git is to GitHub is the same as the phone's gallery is to Google Photos. You have already used galleries and Google Photos in your mobile phones and tablets. So Git stores all the files and commits on your laptop locally, the same way as the pictures are taken by your camera are stored in the gallery. When it comes to sharing the file, GitHub can be used to store your code in its server the same way as the Google Photos. store your pictures on Google Cloud. In GitHub, multiple people can push code to the shared repositories in the same way as your family and friends can upload their photos and videos to the shared albums. But how exactly does it happen? How do teams collaborate on their code base? GitHub allows you to run separate branches that run parallelly to each other. Suppose there is a team of three people where one developer has to solve a bug, another has to contribute to a new feature, and third one wants to test the features. Now, instead of waiting for each other, they can create a branch which diverges from the main branch, where they can conduct their own work individually and without interfering each other's work. And finally, once their work is done, they can merge their work back into main branch. This way, they can do their individual work parallel to each other. Do you know that GitHub is not the only way to store repositories on the cloud? There are also other cloud services provider like Bitbucket, GitLab, and Roadcode, and others also, which provide more or less similar services. But GitHub is the most widely used provider for storing the repositories because of its particular benefits. The main benefit of GitHub is now already known to you, which is code storing and sharing to other developers. But apart from that, GitHub also allows you to host your code in the form of packages or websites, which we will do in just a few minutes. And apart from that, GitHub also allows you to report, track, and assign issues in your code base. What it is means is that suppose you find a bug in the notice board app of Channel I. Now, instead of you trying to find a member of IMG, you can directly report an issue in the notice board repository of IMG on GitHub. This way, one of our developers will be able to know the issue and will start working toward fixing it. Furthermore, you can also contribute to it if you want, since IMG is an open source community. GitHub allows you to add rename, README, wiki pages, description, and detailed documentation about the project or repository, which helps other developers to find the code that you have written. By repository, I just mean the folder or the directory that you have been working on. In all these terms, repositories, directories, and folders are interchangeably reused in developer community. Now it's time for you to build your own portfolio and host it with us on GitHub. And if you follow all the steps carefully, then your portfolio will look something like this. But first of all, let's go to GitHub and see what it actually looks like. As you can see, this is the main screen of github.com once you log in. It may be quite cumbersome to you, but it is quite simple. On the left hand side, you can see your recent repositories are being listed. In the middle, you can see the activities of the members that you follow. Now, we will go to the IMG Git workshop template repository, which link has already been given in the YouTube description video. In this, you will see a green button called code. When you will click, then there will be several options. You have to click on download zip folder or download zip. Once you click it, the GitHub will download the zip folder for the file. It should not take very much long because it just has some HTML files, but let's wait for a minute so that all of you downloads the folder. Meanwhile, you can ask some doubt in the comment section of YouTube and also on Discord if you want.
Someone had asked how to do a commit. So the response given by someone else is correct. Like you have to git commit, but just to clarify once, you have to add those files to the staging area first using the git add command. Using that, After that, you can run the git commit.
Okay. So once the zip has been downloaded, you can go to your downloads folder and right click on the zip file and extract the content, or you can double click it if you have support to extract the files. Once you extract the file, you will see another folder called Git Workshop Template 2021. Now go to your folder and then right click anywhere and open Git Bash if you are on Windows, or open in terminal if you are on Linux. Once you have done that, you can see that there are the same content that you can see in the Git Bash using list command as we have seen previously, and also on the similarly you can see it on your file browser. So let's talk about the files. The first one is readme.md. The MD extension stands for Markdown, which is a type of language commonly used in documentation. Now, you can learn more about it through the resources that we share after the workshop. This file is the first file that any stranger would read when he or she visits your repository on GitHub for the first time. Its purpose is to give the reader an idea of what your repository holds and how it works. Now, second file is index.html. This is the file that holds the content of your web pages. What element would you would need to show on your web page is included here. Finally, the third file is index.css. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets, and it contains the code to beautify your HTML file. Without CSS, HTML is plain and boring. And for your information, HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. Now, let's move to the terminal once again, and we can confirm that currently this folder is not getting tracked by Git. To check that, you can run any command of Git, or you can also look at the hidden folders to see that there is no .git folder in the repo. To see the hidden content, we use ls-a command, and you can see that there is no .git folder. So this repository is not getting tracked by Git right now. So first we need to do that. To use it, we use the command git init. Git init, as Shreyas has already told you previously, git init initializes an empty Git repository in your working directory. Now we run the command git status to look at the content and status of our repository. And you can see that currently there are three files and all the three files are untracked by default. Now we need to make these tracked and we need to make a commit. To make a commit, we first need to move these files to staging area. As Shreyas has told previously, to move to the staging area, we use the command git add. Now there are two ways to add three files. Either you name all these three files, or you can use dot symbol to specify that all the files in the current directory should be added. Now we are using git add dot, and when we run the git status command once again, you will see that all the three files are being added to the staging area and now is in green color. Finally, we will use the command git commit with -m flag to specify our commit message, and our commit message should be specific. We will use commit message initialize our repository or initialize repository, so that we can know later on what will this commit contains. Now, when we run this command, we see that the three files have been changed and 113 sessions are being made. Okay, so if any of you didn't understand the process above, we first unzipped the folder, then went into the folder, then we initialized an empty Git repository by using git init command. Then we saw the status of the folder by using git status command. We saw that there are three files that are being not tracked. To track them, we used git add dot command and then again saw the status. And this time all the files were in green color. So we knew that these have been made to the staging area. Then we ran the command git commit -m so that all the staging area should be committed and the snapshot is being taken. Now, to see the commit that we have actually made, we can again use git log command to see that the commit has been made and we are good to go. Now you can see that the commit has been made, but all these commits are currently on your laptop or your local machine. What happens if your laptop fries out or some random thief come and borrows your laptop and not give you anymore? So if any of you like think of in big companies, so this is a very huge concern for them also. So they always store all of their code and systems file on cloud servers so that none of their data gets lost if one of the machine fails. Now to host this code on the GitHub, we will first create the repository on the GitHub because remember I told you previously that GitHub is like Google Photos. To upload photos to an shared album, you would first have to create the album. So here as well, we need to first create the repository on GitHub. Now, to do so, we will click on the green button New on the left side of the screen. That will take you to the different page. As you can see, this is the form to create the new repository, and the first field is repository name. The name should be very specific in this case because we want to host this as our personal portfolio. So the name of your repository should be your username dot github dot io. I will repeat it once again. The repository name should be your username dot github dot io. Like in my case, the username is Shreyas Dhawan, which you can see on the left hand side in the owner, or you can also click on the profile picture on the top right corner and see that your username is written well above this. So you have to write the name your username dot github dot io and make sure to name the repository public. Now we will click on button create repository, and this will take us to a third page which will contain several of the commands. So there are three sections like create a new repository from command line or push an existing repository from command line. Since we have already made our commit and we already have our repository, so we will follow along with the second option. This option contains three commands that we have to copy and paste it on our terminal, and I will explain them one by one. The first command is git remote add origin and then the URL to our origin. What it means is that it has four contents you can see. First one is git to represent it is a git command. Second one is remote. Remote stands for the remote repository or like online repository that is the replica of your local repository. The third one is add. Add represents another assigning a new variable to your online repository. Fourth one is origin. Origin is the name that of the variable that you are giving to your online repository. So you can name it anything that you want, like you can name it mango, apple, or random name also. That name will be the variable that will be assigned to your directory URL. So let's copy this command and paste it in our terminal. To do that, we can right click and use paste, or you can do Control Shift V if you are on Linux. We do that and hit enter, and if everything goes fine, then nothing will appear on the terminal. Now let's head back to the Chrome or browser and copy the second command. And first look at the second command. It is git branch minus m main. This command is used to denote that we will call our default branch as main branch. This step is recently introduced in Git and GitHub because previously they used to call their default branch as master branch, but recently they have switched their default name from master to main. So to get everybody in sync, and if someone has old browser, this command will help them to rename the branch to main. So that's why we use git branch minus m main. We will again copy this command and paste it in terminal and then hit enter. Now let's move toward the third and our final command, git push minus u origin main. So this is also one of the important command that you will be using many a time. So let's understand this command. The first part is again git, that represent it is a git command. Second word is push. Push represents that you push your local code or local commits to your foreign repository or online repository. Let's skip this minus u flag for once and see that after that it has shown origin. Origin represent which of the repositories that you want to push to. Suppose you have multiple online repositories by different name. So this one is to show that okay, I want to push my code to origin repository. And the fourth and final word is main, which denotes which branch I want to push my code to. Let's say you have multiple branches, like I have told before, and I want to push to my main branch only. So the four words are understandable now. And minus u denotes that from now on, when I will use git push, then by default, I will push to origin repository and main branch. So that's why git push minus u origin main is used. Uh, if anyone has doubt in these three steps or before, you can ask directly in our Discord server or YouTube live chats also. Uh, let's copy this command and paste it in the terminal. And when you will hit enter, then you can see that this will take a moment of your time. Okay, so there is another step of authentication in our case, and in your case it will too. If you are on Windows, then hopefully you will get a dialog box to authenticate it with the GitHub on the Chrome. Otherwise, you can also authenticate by using username and password option. So we will write the username. In my case, the username is Shreyas Dhawan. And for password, GitHub has recently announced a new feature called GitHub Personal Access Tokens. It has removed the normal password authentication because your password can be leaked if you share your screen or something like that. So first you have to generate the personal access token if you are like us. So to generate the token, we first go to github.com and click on our profile picture. Then we click on our profile picture. Now we will go to settings option in our profile menu. When we hit the settings page, we will see that there is an option of security and GitHub, wait, developer settings on the left hand side of the page. Remember, developer settings option on the left hand side. When we click on the developer settings, we will see the option of personal access token. Once we click that, there will be an option to generate new token. So you just have to click on it, and you can give any note so that you will be uh, known, okay, this password is for this purpose. And remember to give repo access to the password. Now scroll down and click on generate token. This will show your GitHub token. You just have to select it and copy it, or you can directly click on copy button. Now you just have to, yeah, one make sure to copy this thing, and you will not see this password once more, because for security purposes, so make sure to copy. And now we will head back to our terminal and paste this token as our password. Once we paste it and hit enter, the Git will upload our commits to the GitHub repository. You can see that the objects have been written and compressed so that the data can be saved. And then we have pushed our code to the Shreyas d1.github.io.git branch repository and main branch. Now we will head back to GitHub on our repository page and hit refresh. And once you refresh it, you will see that your code is being reflected on the GitHub official pages. Now, this is the way to share your code to your friends and other developers so that they can also see your code by going to your repository and then downloading your code. Now, you can see that your code is being hosted on this online, but this is just the template that we have given to you, but you have to personalize it as well. So now let's edit out the template. But before the template, I want every one of you to not feel shy and ask anything in the doubt section if you have any, because I guess this is quite cumbersome for few of you. So if you have any doubt, you can ask them in the doubt section in the Discord or in the YouTube live chats as well. Okay, so there are no new doubts, I guess. So we will continue with editing our template. To edit the template, you can right click on the index.html and open it with any of your application like Notepad or text editor, or if you have any specific text editor like VS Code or Sublime Text or Atom or anything, you can do. It doesn't matter. We will, for the purposes of this workshop, we will open it by using the default text editor, and we will first maximize the screen and increase the font so that every one of you can also see. Okay, so as you can see, this is the template, or you can say HTML template, in which there are some comments. You can read it, and you will see that there are some variables that we have defined, like full name, profile pic, studying year, GitHub username. These are the four variables that you have to fill and write your own values in it. So the first variable, as you can see, is full name. And as you know, full name means your full name. So as my friend Shreyas is writing this code, so he will write his full name, Shreyas Dodhamani. And hopefully you will write your full name also. Now for the second variable is GitHub username. As we have shown you previously, your GitHub username is same as you can see on the top right corner of your GitHub, or clicking on the profile picture. So in our case, the username is Shreyas Dhawan. Yeah, you can see it on your profile page also, Shreyas Divan. Your GitHub username is on line 35 number. You have to remove the curly braces and dollar sign and place the username in both the places. There are two variables of GitHub username. You have to edit both of them. Okay. Now come to the third variable, which is profile pic URL. As you can see, it is the student profile pic URL that can be taken from any public website such as GitHub or Facebook. For the purposes of it, we will take the profile picture URL from GitHub. To do that, first click on your profile on the top right corner and then click on your username to go to your profile view. Once you reach that, you will see your picture. And if you are not seeing that, you can upload it right on in the profile menu in the edit profile section. Now right click on your profile photo. You will see an option of copy image address. Here I want to warn you about, do not click on copy link address. We have to click on copy image address so that the image address can be copied and not link address. Once you do that, you can also confirm it by copy pasting it on your local browser and testing that the image is being shown perfectly. As in our case, the image is being shown. So now we will just copy it and place it in our template. After pasting it, there remains only our final variable, which is studying year. As you know, most of you will be in your freshman year or first year, so you will be filling out freshman. But since I and Shreyas are in junior year or pre-final year, we will write out junior in our place. So on line 31, you will write freshman and we will write junior. If any of you is in some other year, you can write by your choice also. With that, now let's save our file and close the editor. Or and now you can also double click it or open it with any browser to see that your web page is being hosted locally perfectly. So you can see that the profile picture is being held perfectly and my name, username, and my year is being shown correctly. If it is not happening with your case, then you can ask the doubt in the Discord channel or YouTube live comments. Okay, so now moving forward, now you can notice that we have changed our file. So when we will go to terminal or in your case git bash and try to enter git status to look at the status of our repository or working directory, you will see that the index.html file is modified and it is being tracked, but it is modified. So to reflect the changes in our commit, we have to again add it on our staging area and then commit. To add to our staging area, we will again use the command git add and then we will write our file name index.html And then again you can git status to check that the file is now in green color. Now you have staged ready your file, and now we will commit by using command git commit, and we will write the message in populate the variables or personalize or anything that you want, but it should be meaningful, so that when you will again come to the your portfolio, then you can notice that okay, this in this commit I have done this much of work. Now once you do that, you will see that there are one file changed, six insertions added, and six deletion that represent just six modification. Now that you have committed, you need to push the change to your again repository. To do that, we will use git push command, and this time, as you I have already told, we don't need to add origin main in our command, because we already told git to use -u flag, and by using -u we told that by default origin and main should be our default repository and branch. Again, we will use our username and GitHub personal access token for our username and password. My username is Shresh Dhawan, and my password I'm just again copying it from GitHub personal access tokens. You can do that too. Once you did that, you will see that your code is being pushed to GitHub. And when you go to your repository page on your browser and refresh the page, you will see that the latest commit message has been changed to personalized portfolio, which is the latest commit. Now your code is being shared to GitHub and the whole world can see your code, but the code is not hosted yet. There is a very minute difference between code sharing and code hosting. Code sharing means that you share the files of your code, and code hosting means that you share the result of your code. To host your code, we will first go to the settings tab and tell the GitHub that we want to host our code. To tell the GitHub, we need to go to the pages section on the left side of our page. We will click on pages, and if you are by default showing that your site is published, then it is okay, but most of you will be showing not showing this. To make this show, you have to select the branch to the main branch. If it is showing none, you click on main branch, and you select the default directory to root directory. I will repeat it again: select the branch to main branch and directory to root directory. And then after scrolling down, there will be a button to publish or save button. If you click on that and refresh it, you will be looking at the similar message that your site is published at shreyasdawan.github.io or your username.github.io. Now, with that, you are done. You can click on the URL to see that your page is now being hosted with GitHub. And every person that you know, if they know your username and your the URL, they can look at your portfolio and get to know about you. Now, now through this process, we understood that how code can be shared through community on GitHub. You downloaded a template provided by IMG community, edited it to your purposes, and hosted it on your account. What is open source if not this? This brings us to the end of this workshop. However, this is just the beginning of our development journey and your development journey. The content we covered in this workshop just scratches the surface of Git. There are many more commands and many more concepts to learn. And to understand more about it, you can find the resources that we have compiled in the Discord channel, Git Workshop. Thank you so much for your time and see you in our next workshop. You can, once again, I will repeat, if you have any doubts still, you can still ask in our Discord channel and also in our YouTube live comments. Thank you.